Hi, my name's Damien Azzopardi. I'm the CEO of Bricktastics. We are Australia's largest second-hand Lego seller and buyer. What we do is essentially match Lego fans with the bricks they need to create their dreams. And that looks like, bulk Lego creativity packs that we find from families that we buy second-hand Lego from. So we sort Lego, we sell Lego, and we're part of that whole ecosystem. What inspired me to start my business? It really was a drive to want to be the maker of my own future, to contribute to the world, to add value to people's lives. And really, it was just that drive, and just that recognition that my 9-to-5 job wasn't providing that, and that I wanted to create something special and that could live on in the memories of the world, basically. And that's really what it was. It wasn't I wanted to start X business, I wanted to start Y business. It was just I have this desire there. And that started to express itself in what I did with my life, essentially. And that started with small ventures, with like handmade coin jewelry, selling that kind of stuff online in my own e-commerce store, and learning the pros and the cons of how that works and fitting that into my life, and then transitioning into my business, which is now Bricktastics. And that didn't even start intentionally, right? That was my nephew had gotten into Lego, and I was saying to myself, well, wouldn't it be cool if I kind of started changing around my habits in life and become more productive with my time, and start sharing my passion of Lego with him. And so I started getting back into Lego, and I went out and I bought myself some Lego from just a random family and started building it in my spare time, and then started selling that online and sharing that passion with my nephew. And then that's where my desire to add value to the world and to create a business and to be the master of my own future started to kick in. And I think without that passion, I wouldn't have recognized that there was an opportunity there. And that's where I saw, oh, I could actually make something of this. There's value being provided when I'm selling my Lego back to people on eBay, for example. And the economics make sense, and the opportunity is there, and there might be something behind that. And that's where my business essentially started, was the recognition that I had a scalable idea that could provide value to people. So that's how Bricktastics was born. Yeah, so like the barriers that may have been in the way for me to start my business or to go full time or to take those sorts of risks that entrepreneurs tend to do when they go from working life to entrepreneurial life, some of those weren't actually there for me, because I was already making that transition in my life towards risk taking, recognizing that without risk there is no reward. So I was already getting myself into that frame of mind that was helping me sort of make that leap, and through various training courses and the people I was engaging with in my life, I was starting to surround myself with the kinds of people that were on the same page as me, if you know what I mean. And essentially that's why the leap was a little bit more natural. And it also wasn't as scary because I recognized that I didn't need to just jump off the deep end. I didn't need to just quit my job and then hope that everything worked out. I realized that I could scale things as well. So I went into the deep end slowly. I waded in, if you will. And essentially that's what happened. Was I dropped a day here, I dropped a day there, I scaled up things here, I scaled up things there, and I always sort of had an exit strategy. And it wasn't really until I started working with Engenesis that I started to make leaps that were a little bit more risky but better thought out. And I think that's where things started to really accelerate for me, was when I started working with Engenesis, was essentially that I had more clarity around where I could take the risks, and I understood that those risks were backed by really logical and sound decisions that had been well thought out with the people at Engenesis. And so in a way it wasn't as scary. I knew why I was doing it, and I knew all the elements that were in place, both good and bad. Yeah. Look, the things that I didn't know, I think that's a really good point, and I've been thinking about this. And I think that's the thing that Engenesis gave me the most, was access to the things that I didn't know that I didn't know. And giving me clarity around the business, around the numbers, around where I actually was on a day-to-day basis with my business that helped the most. Because a lot of the fear and anxiety that comes out of being an entrepreneur tends to stem from not actually understanding what the future looks like and where you actually are in the present. So I would wake up every single morning and think, am I making money? Am I losing money? What's going to happen tomorrow? And what's the worst and best case scenarios? And not really having any clarity on that whatsoever. And so when I was working with Engenesis, essentially that started to get made clear. So we would do exercises where we would go through the numbers. I would go away and I would come back next week, and I would have done all of this work around finding out, what's my cash flow like? How much am I losing or making every month? What could I expect going into the future? Where have I been in the past? And all of a sudden I found that even though the anxieties were still there a little bit, I was able to logically quash them and make them go away, because I actually knew in a spreadsheet that I now had developed, this is what I'm doing this month, this is where I'm going next month, this is what my cash flow statement looks like, and this is how much risk and gain and loss I'm creating within my business in realness, in physicalness, in reality, not in my head. And so that really helped quite a lot, to really understand where I was. And the most valuable thing you can do in business is to surround yourself by people who can ask the questions you've never thought of and help you to understand the things that you need to know and you don't currently know them. And you don't know that you need to know them, And that was the most valuable part of working with Engenesis and developing myself as an entrepreneur. It was understanding that that the way I was thinking about the business, the kind of clarity that I had on the business, the way that I was going about growing my business was all good and well, but I didn't know the things that I now know. And I never would have known those things, such as, what my cash flow statements were like, what my profit beyond monthly expenses were, whether I was actually making money, whether I was actually losing money, how large my market segment was, all of that kind of good stuff. I didn't have all of that information prior to working with Engenesis, and without those things in place, I didn't really have a clear future. So I would say for people who are looking to go on this journey and to work with Engenesis, to really understand that what you're signing up for is access to the things that you don't know yet. And those are hard to value, but trust me, they're there. And there'll be a lot of value once they get sort of teased out through your meetings. So 3 tangible areas where I got immense value that come to mind when working with Engenesis. The first one was clarity on the numbers. So I came into Engenesis. Well, this is what struck me the most actually, was just how wrong I was about where I thought my position in the business was financially. When I went through the work with Engenesis and really focused on getting clarity around the day-to-day operations, what the expenses were like, what was coming in and going out every single month, I actually realized that my cash position and the functioning of the business was completely off from where I thought it was. It was both better and worse than I had initially thought, And that was a really great place to find myself, because both psychologically it put me in a state of mind that was a lot more accurate. If I was worried for a legitimate reason, but more to the point, I was no longer worried about things because of the uncertainty around them. Now I actually understood, where I was and where I was going to be. And so there was a lot more certainty surrounding the viability of my business, So that was a great area to focus on with Engenesis. The second area was in regards, I guess you could summarize it as working smarter. So Engenesis really helped me to understand where to focus my attention and where I could get the biggest bang for my buck, if you will. And so that looked a lot like, I wanted to build a website, but I also wanted to go to Amazon as a platform to sell my products. And through the discussion with Engenesis, we were able to assess which one was a better use of my time, and to really help me understand that my time is limited, and so are my projects. So I should really be thinking about all the projects available to me at the beginning, and then assessing which ones are the ones I should go after and in what order, instead of just mindlessly making changes and hoping that everything works out okay, which is a common story for people who don't really understand how to grow businesses efficiently and effectively. And that's something I've learned through Engenesis too. When you come to Engenesis, you're thinking about your business. And I imagine a lot of people are thinking day to day, how do I get the numbers right? How do I pay my staff? Is this going to work? I just need help. The great thing about Engenesis is they're very forward thinking. So we come into Engenesis as business owners of X, Y, and Z business, but we leave with a greater sense of who we are for the world and for our business now and for our businesses in the future. And that is very valuable to really get an understanding of who you're going to be in life beyond this business or beyond where you are right now with your business. So I've left Engenesis and I'm still on this journey of understanding who I want to be for the world and where my businesses fit into my life. And that's a different way from when I came into Engenesis, where I was just thinking about how can I fit into my business. So it's a much better position to be in. And I think that if you really want to be a high performer in life and you want to have really great success, those are the kinds of things to be thinking about beyond the horizon and what the big game plan is. And Engenesis helps with that too. When I was approached to join Engenesis as a client, the obvious thing that always comes up is the money. A lot of people are always, I know this was me and definitely in the past, was, it's a lot of money and I don't want to spend X, Y, and Z. What if it doesn't work out? Will I get the value? Those are always the things that come up. And I was in a good position because I already had started to understand the idea of investing within yourself and risk and reward and all of those really basic concepts. But I think for me what came up when I was approached to join Engenesis was just essentially recognizing that the money was like the smallest thing really to think about, because what you're really paying for is access to leverage, which is the leverage of their knowledge within your business, and you're also paying for that expertise. And you're paying for, the best way to describe it is compounding knowledge, right? So what I've learned now will be with me for the rest of my life, and that's going to pay itself off for years and decades to come. And when you actually look at the investment that we make, the time investment that we make as entrepreneurs in Engenesis, it really ends up being well worth it in the long run, because that's education that sticks with you, or the changes you make in your business as a result of the conversations and the directions you have with Engenesis, those will compound and compound for years to come as well. So I recognize that, and I realized not to think short term and not to think about my wallet or think about my time, and actually to think about how this would affect me in the future. And it really helped as well that I knew the people at Engenesis on a personal level, because they're great people, they have a lot of integrity, and I would trust them with my business. What does the future look like for me? That's an interesting point. I don't know, and that's the most exciting part. But I have an idea of where I want it to go, and I've helped shape that through Engenesis, and that's been fantastic. So going back to those concepts of who you want to be for the world in business and within your life, and discussing those things. My business is in a really nice position at the moment, and I've got a lot of clarity around it, and that's a great place to be. And it was always from the beginning of my discussions with Engenesis that I was wanting to go on to the next thing and go bigger and better. And so that was always in the back of our conversations. And I might not know where I'm going in the future, but I know it's going to be something big, and I'm really excited for that. And my businesses are running well on their own. They're becoming a lot more automated. They're fitting into my larger goals of becoming financially free. And as soon as I'm financially free, then things open up even more. But I'm just so excited for the future to see what business opportunities come up and how I can employ the knowledge that I've got now through Engenesis to see my next business succeed, to add value to my customers, to add value to my employees, and really sort of achieve the heights that I want to achieve in life so that others can benefit from the knowledge that I've gained. Yeah. Okay, So who is someone that wouldn't be suited to work with Engenesis? Well, first of all, it's somebody who thinks they know everything and they're too busy trying to tell everybody what they know rather than actually open their ears and hear what other people know. Because a wise man knows that he knows nothing, right? So at Engenesis, you've got to be open-minded, understand that they've got a lot of resources and a lot of knowledge, and be willing to take that on and to have that discussion and to be able to filter that through the needs of what you have in the business, obviously, but be open to it. So I would say someone who's not open to new information, definitely Engenesis is not the right place to be. So if I was to go back in time and sort of talk to myself, say 5 years ago, who's starting to get these big ambitions, and to say to him, what you need to know in order to make the leaps that you have in the last few years, particularly with, investing within Engenesis' services. And more broadly, I mean, what would you say to yourself as a potential client? I would say, let's see, someone once said to me, the biggest investment you can make is in yourself and your knowledge, because everything stems from the things that you know and the actions you take from that information. And I would say, really get present to the fact that you are your biggest investment, and who you decide to spend your time with and your money on and the information you choose to listen to is really important. So always choose the highest quality people and the highest quality information. And I would say Engenesis has got that. And so, that's all you need to know. One of the things that I haven't mentioned, which is really valuable, I think, at Engenesis, is access to a new network as well. So the people at Engenesis are not only coaching you on how to grow your own business, but they're also looking for opportunities for other aspects of your business life and other partnerships and opportunities. So, for example, I've been a sponsor of several events that both gave back to the community of young entrepreneurs, as well as advertised my business at the same time in a way that was a perfect fit. There was an opportunity that came out of knowing the people at Engenesis. So business opportunities, access to smart people within business, investment ideas, all these things also come from being involved with the Engenesis brand and the people at it. And that has value too. Because as someone who's a savvy investor and also a business person, I really value having access to ideas and opportunities, and there's plenty of those around as well.